Welcome back to Cheche, the program where opinion counts on Citizen TV. We know that pockets of this country are chronically food insecure. There's a memorable image of farmers pouring milk out because there's too much of it. We've heard about food going to waste in parts of the country. Well, the Majority Whip of the Senate, Senator Cheche is hoping to consign all that to the past through her food security bill. She's our guest today, along with Dr. John Mutunga, who lobbies on behalf of farmers. And before the break, we were addressing the point of Kenya being an agrarian country, but the paradox of it being unable to feed itself. And we're coming to the point of the budget, the budgetary allocation. And you were making the point that the allocation is paltry. Please carry on.
We have not managed our agrarian reform, or let's say the agricultural reform, the way we should have done. This started way back in 2003, after the economic recovery strategy for wealth and employment creation. A strategy for revitalizing agriculture was put up to basically interpret this orientation. And that strategy proposed many different kind of strategies that would definitely alleviate the food security. However, one of the key provisions within even the African, the NEPA process is that in implementing the Comprehensive African Agriculture Development Program, Kenya did sign the Maputo Protocol in 2003, that by 2008, Kenya will have given agriculture 10% of the budget so that we can be food secure and also stimulate economic development through industrialization.
And where are we now?
Right now, it is pathetic. If I may be very sincere, what is allocated to agriculture is a total, including recurrent, is a total of that 4.5 billion Kenya shillings, which translates into 1.56% of the budget. Against 10%, which was supposed to have been achieved in 2008. On the other hand, if you look at what they define as agricultural, bring in water, environment, and lands, it brings in another 44 billion. It becomes a total of 3.5%. Now, if you see analysts are talking about agriculture having been given 5%, the perception is that within the infrastructure development, there's some money that will do infrastructural improvement in the rural areas.
For distribution and market access.
But I've looked at that as well. And unless it is integrated in what they are calling support to the rural, to ongoing road construction, then I didn't see anything, because we are seeing standard gauge railway, we are seeing geothermal, we are seeing other things, making electricity cheaper and so on. And then there is also some provision for infrastructure funded from other sources outside Kenya. So we are not serious in terms of making sure that we have food security. As a nation, we have lost it. Why am I saying this? There is no agriculture in the world which is not subsidized. None. All countries look at different modes of subsidization. Some do payments. As we have shied off from actual subsidization, what we give to agriculture, 3 billion shillings in terms of cost reduction in input, is a joke.
Okay. How do we rectify that joke? Does your bill address that?
Well, my bill addresses half of it, but I know I will still have to go to the national government in terms of the key budget of agriculture, in terms of enforcing. One, when they talk about the inputs, are we just talking about inputs of fertilizer? Because I think we settle so much, and you can see again, it's a business. That's why so much is put, or we have to give farmers fertilizer. But we're not just saying fertilizer. We are saying you need extension offices to go back. The soil today, the farmers will plant. Everything you find is just going down. I remember just the other day in Nakuru, farmers were complaining that their tomatoes have just gone rotten after spraying some of the pesticides they were given. So for me, I'm saying I want us to go back to the days we had an extension officer. Now the counties can do it. Let them go. Let us have, and we want to appreciate citizens always bringing in smart farming. We can go back to that smart farming and now put farmers, the small-scale farmers, together, so that one, I might decide I can do well in maize.
So what exactly is the proposal within the bill? The
proposal now, one of the functions of those committees is that, to ensure that you also enforce the county governments to have officers who can go around to ensure farmers are also planting. Some farmers even have land, but they don't need, they are not using the land. So we have to also bring in an incentive to make sure every farmer is using his land, utilizing the land, to ensure there's something that will come out in the end. Be it sweet potatoes, be it anything, but let us plant something in that soil.
And you used to be an extension officer.
Yes, I was. I think one thing that I would like Senator to actually look into is how to anchor this bill onto another bill that is queuing in the Ministry of Lands on land use master planning. The land use planning bill is so critical to this country that we need to designate what land use is for whatever type of land. Because we need to come up and say, this is the agricultural unit, and this is what we can do best. This is the potential for this area. This is what we can do. That linkage needs to be very clear. On the other hand, there are several things that really don't happen well in this country because of underfunding. We have a lot of technology generated by researchers who have not been adequately funded by government. They have been funded by donors, and therefore, at the end of the day, they generate donors' agenda. So these packages, these technologies have not been moved to the farmers adequately. The current agricultural extension staff to farmer ratio is 1 to 1407. The recommended conventional ratio is 1 to 400. So you can imagine that it will take more than 3 years for a farmer to be reached by an extensionist. Yet we are talking about food security. It's all a total joke. There is no focus on food security in this country.
Then, Anish, you know, the issues we are dealing with are very sensitive, and we need to think seriously about them. I like your idea of coming up with a bill. When Dr. Mutunga brings up the issue of extension officers, and this joke that we have extended for the last over 50 years of killing ourselves. And I want to give you an example of what is happening. Yesterday I was in the rural areas and they were immunizing cows. And I just realized there was only one guy seated somewhere who did not even have a vehicle. The vehicle brought her, but she had no vehicle to go back, had to give the same a lift. Then you are telling the farmers to take their cows to that one individual seated somewhere in a church or in a primary school. And you have taught these people to do zero grazing. So they have to demolish their cattle sheds, drag the cows that do not know how even to move, to walk, to that one individual seated several kilometers so that they can go and get an injection. I think when we talk about extension officers, we are talking about issues of them going to the farmers. Then come to the issue of land use, the one that you're talking about. Who are the people who own land, big chunks of land in this country? They're the rich. Senator, you have them in the Senate and in Parliament. How are they themselves using the land, the huge tracts of land that they have? Before you tell a guy who owns 40 by 80 piece of land what to do with that land. Well, I support the land use. We need also to know the issues of how much land you use, how much land you own, and how you're using that land for the benefit, not of yourself, but of the country.
I agree with you, Awero, and I think I know at one point when we were doing this bill, I had a very radical thinking also that it's time also we try and request or do something that can help Kenyans who have, let's say, for example, 5 acres. If you get to 3, you are not allowed completely to subdivide that. I was just trying to think, how do we, even if we talk about food security, now when you have a quota or whatever, how does it now translate back even to your family, and you're growing at that time? You have 3 acreages, you have children coming in, and you know with our culture and our society, you must give your sons at least some of that land. But then the other thing...
And daughters?
And daughters. Now, of course, yes, even my dad has given me, but not 3 acres. That's another day. But the most important thing we need to ask ourselves is that when I look at what the Constitution was trying also to address on land, is that we don't need to really look at how many acres do you have. We just need to put in a policy and then a bill that says, fine, you have 10,000 acres. How much, what percentage are you using? What percentage are you not using? Can you pay KRA, some good rates, revenue, and we start collecting revenue from the same. And it will still help us to achieve the same goal that we are looking money for extension officers. In fact, if we put revenue first, on every land that somebody has and is not usable, we'll get a lot of money.
The other thing that you talk about in the bill, I believe you address the context of emergencies.
Yes.
And you're proposing certain powers for the president.
Yes.
Take us through that.
So that we don't also disconnect the country completely, which I know we are trying to do, but in a different way, is that...
What do you mean by that?
When you look at how we are running our counties, in 10 years to come, we'll have disconnected ourselves from the national government. If the leaders, again, who are given the responsibility by the people, are not able to look at the things we are doing. You know, we do it very blindly, but we are not careful in remembering. The Constitution always reminds us Kenya is a unitary state. But because of some frustrations, and that's why I always say, when we are doing these things, always remember, at the moment we are not good with governance, but always remember, we must use them so that the country just remains at the same peak. And that's why, for me, when we talk of food, in the end, it's the president. At one point, if we have an emergency and people are dying, we will not remember even the governors. We will remember the head of state. So it's very important to give him also the veto of power, because even the governors can decide, I don't like this clan, therefore you will not receive any food. You're better off even dying. But he's not saying, and because it's quiet, and because they're playing a game of politics, by the time we wake up as a nation, you'll find things gone very bad. So it's always important to remember the president in the end has a responsibility to ensure his country is secure, the food is surplus, his people wake up in the morning. For them to be productive, they must start with food and shelter.
Okay, so what are you saying the president should do, particularly during food emergencies?
During food emergencies, he comes in and now he can order, I mean, in the very main lane, so that somebody can understand, is that when we have an emergency, the president can give an order to the ministry without looking at the structures and that we need food to go to Tana River, we need food. He can, at any given point, and because we've given him veto even in the Constitution, it's the same veto we are saying. He has the end results in any emergency that comes.
Right.
I just wanted to provide the infrastructure to ensure food arrives there.
I just wanted to add to her voice that the Constitution gives the prerogative to the president. Actually, it is his responsibility to feed its people properly. Secondly, it's only the president who can declare a national disaster, especially food-related disaster, or disasters really, a national disaster, is the one who can call upon for external support. So I think as we move on to county governments, we need to be realistic to the fact that we have Kenya as a state, and then it's the international community. There is a mechanism for consulting and contacting and engaging the international community, which needs to be respected. On the other hand, when it comes to food distribution, I think the committees that are being set in this bill can help a lot in terms of collecting data, verifying the information that is collected from there, targeting the areas themselves to be targeted on family relief, and defining the type of food that is considered as quality food for those areas. On the other hand, when it comes to the bill itself, there is one small provision that I think you need to look at. That is in terms of ensuring food production or physical availability of food and engagement of youth. Our agriculture is basically by the older people. This bill talks about farm implements. I would like that particular term to be looked into very carefully, because we cannot promote implements in the 21st century which were used in 2000 BC, before Christ. That's what we use, the whole is 2000 BC technology. We should be talking about mechanization, various types and facets of mechanization that will now engage, or rather encourage our youth to engage in agriculture, because they wouldn't be interested. What they're not interested in is drudgery. They will actually participate in agriculture as long as it's not laborious and as long as it's sufficiently remunerative.
When you talk about modern mechanization, and Lachi is telling us about maize and those traditional foods or crops, the question of the GMO arises.
Yes. Okay. And several of our viewers are asking about that.
What is the bill saying about the use of GMOs in Kenya? And maybe I ask you, Senator Lachi, Why do we think that we are more human beings than the human beings in Chile and other countries who are using GMO?
Okay, one question at a time. GMOs.
GMOs. I think for us, we are not addressing the issue of GMO. That's, and it has to go to the ministry, because now they are the ones at the point of crops and what. As we are talking at the end, the production part. So you're talking at the implementation. In the end, we have planted, we have finished, now we have the food. This is what this bill is addressing. That's why it's a bill addressing hunger. Yes. Hunger. After agriculture has given, but we will always lie us to ensure we don't have GMOs. That's why we are going back and saying, look at your own traditional foods. Let us look at that. Let us go back to that.
But let me be an ignorant Kenyan.
Yes.
Why are you saying that we keep on growing the oranges this size that cannot even feed a 1-year-old kid? When we can grow one that can feed 2 people or 3.
Well, we have seen, I think, Mutinga will help me on that, since he's from the ministry. But at the same time,
the ministry,
as Kenyans, I think for the last 20 years, we've been asking ourselves the issue of GMO. And there are many issues that arise. I think the best thing we can do, even as a country, is create awareness of Kenyans, not just those who understand what GMO is, but the ignorant Kenyan who is the small farmer, to come and understand, when I do GMO for 5 or 10 years, what happens to my land after that? Because I think those are the things, when we look at, always remember your climate. Yes. Your climate is very different with the seasonal climate that we have in Europe. And maybe that is why they will have to use GMO, because one, you only have sun in a term of 3 months, and that sun goes. So you have something that has to...
Rumburu is an ignorant Kenyan.
Yes.
Years before, we never used to use fertilizer.
I'll tell the ignorant Kenyan, you're lucky you have sun, you are in a tropical, in fact on the equator, never think of GMO.
Somebody here says that you lectured them, so we'll refer to your academic expertise.
Yes. Let me say something about GM technology or genetic engineering as a technology to use. We call it non-conventional. It's not conventional technology. It is non-conventional in the sense that it uses gene transfer. It's called. It has to do with it's transgenic. It moves one gene from one variety to another, one organism to another, which are not related.
Yes.
And you know, genetically, inheritance is about relationship. Intra-specific breeding is not possible. I mean, but intra is what is possible. Now, on the other hand, what is the position of the farmers of this country, if I may speak from that, in terms of GMO? The question is whether we have exhausted conventional ways, technology that we have. We have a lot of research findings that clearly show that we actually have not used the potential we have. Our main problem is not the genes, our main problem is water. And if we can irrigate our land, it is possible for us to produce sufficient food. Actually, I don't think what we need to have is a very strategic irrigation systems that are set to engage the people in actually doing it, and they'll be able to produce. Again, we need to make inputs cheaper so that people can use technology. You can have the seed technology, which you can use potential you cannot exploit because you don't have water, and you don't have the relevant inputs. So we need to make it cheaper for the farmers to acquire the technology and the seeds, and therefore we give them water for irrigation. And we have sufficient amount of water to irrigate about 4 times the land we have. If you look at the last 1 month, 2 months we have had a lot of rain and it has washed off everything. We have not managed our water. We just need to manage. We don't even need to go to the international water, rivers. We really don't need to go to Tapunzoia. We need to manage surface runoff. Block it and irrigate downstream.
Okay, we've moved into water. There's several questions around that. But I'd like us to tie up the question of GMOs, because there's several questions about that.
Okay.
So your position is what?
As farmers, the position, when Kenyans can speak like I am and say I'm a Kenyan scientist who is selling this technology to the Kenyans, I know that it won't hurt the human life. It is therefore, health-wise, it doesn't have any effects. It doesn't have effects to the environment. It doesn't have effects to the relatives of these particular crops. It doesn't have effects to the soil. then the Kenyan farmers are willing and ready to adopt, because son of Mutunga has seen it, who is their child. But if you import a technology from a company which is interested in profit making, you have to be extremely careful, especially when it comes to food relationships. Now, on the other hand, if this technology is not for food, for instance, in cotton, I don't think there is any serious problem unless we and our scientists can ascertain that there will be no environmental implications if we grow the BT cotton in those areas that cotton do well. We can transform like Mali has done and other countries, and therefore we can take advantage of AGOA and COMESA and other possibilities. Therefore, that farmers say they would like to try that. Unfortunately, we would like a Kenyan scientist to assure the Kenyans. That's what we are saying. We are not saying, we are saying that let's not accompany out there. Yes, let them verify and own it and say, I am the one who can tell you as a Kenyan. Because there's a lot of contradicting literature in the domain. There's a lot of issues.
I think, Mutunga, we can also go beyond. I went to an AU meeting and I realized we have very many Kenyans, or even our own neighbor sisters and brothers, who have done a lot of research on agriculture for Africa, and they are willing to give every country to just share that finding, and so that you can balance and see, do you really need to do GMO or do you just need to use your own technology but ensure you have good food for your people?
Does the bill talk about investing in research?
On this?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Yes, GMO will not solve the problem of water, it will not solve the problem of inputs, it will only probably prevent a few pests.
But doesn't it, but wanted to address the issue of yield, the varieties of seeds that you're planting. If we have superior seeds and crops that we're growing, which therefore, deliver greater yield and therefore ensure that, we have more to go around.
Yeah, we are saying it's a continuum. Whichever technology you want to apply, you must challenge the genetic potential of that particular variety. So if you don't challenge the potential by ensuring that the soils are right, in Kenya we apply DAP, CAN and so on as fertilizers without asking ourselves, what is the status of the soil health?
Yeah.
How much of soil sampling and testing do we do, and how many of these resources do we give in record time, so that farmers can know what fertilizer to use? How much have we advised our blending factories? Now we are talking about establishing a fertilizer producing factory. Instead of looking at how do we come up with different blends of different soils in different areas so they can exhaust the soil potential. Those are the kind of fundamental issues we need to deal with. We look up there when the solution needed is down here. So that's the Kenyans are operating above par when they are supposed to sort out their basic issues. Our issues are basic.
Then maybe the Ministry of Agriculture should also go back and start working very closely with the universities so that they help them. The students who are doing agriculture can even volunteer to go into the areas, do research on soil, and come up with serious findings, so that when we are moving on trying to say, let us solve the problem once and for all.
Does this speak to the issue of food sovereignty?
Yeah. It basically discusses the issues, the provisions within the food sovereignty. Because food sovereignty is about the decision that a state takes on how to do its food issues. You can procure food, you can produce food, you can borrow food, whichever it is, that's a sovereignty issue. You are left with a decision on how to ensure that you can sort out your food issues without interfering with the livelihoods of the people and ensuring the right to food to everyone.
So what's the difference between food security, as we've been discussing this morning, and food sovereignty?
Okay. Food security is about access to food in various forms.
Whether it's coming from donors or whatever.
Wherever it is coming from. Ensuring access to food, to quality food. Food sovereignty are the decisions that a state makes on how to access that food.
So is your bill properly labeled? Should it be the food security bill, or should it be a food sovereignty bill? Because you're talking about the decisions Kenya should be, and the policies. You're trying to implement the constitution, right? Which is a sovereign action that you're discussing. So should we be thinking about food security or food sovereignty?
I think food security.
Combines the two.
But in the whole holistic approach, that's why now when you bring in the ministries, it links both, because when you're talking about the sovereign of that food, you have to ask yourself then thereafter, how do you implement? Then this helps you to unlock what the sovereign is talking about. Because the sovereign is like an sort of an advisory. You're advising the implementer that this is what you want to see after I have given you certain objectives on how to achieve that. So this is the achiever of what your objective is.
Okay, what the bill looks at is it borrows from the international sovereignty principle,
yes,
which basically states that we have enough food at the global level. The basic problem is distribution. Yeah. We actually waste a lot more food than the hungry people will need to feed themselves comfortably. Now, the sovereignty issue has to do with distribution of the food, ensuring that people can access food. It does to contextualize that. About food security is making sure that there is either physical or social or economic access. Yes. So it also does that. It goes down to commit county governments to participate with the national government. And there are clear initiatives. I think if you look at the way the government is structured, if you look at the Ministry of Industrialization, it is so central in ensuring that we actually have food security.
Food security,
because it talks about trade, it talks about transforming from technology through innovation to commercialization. And they're setting up huge commercial centers which can even draw inputs from other countries. Raw materials from other countries will become an industrial hub that will therefore link to food distribution within the country. The question is, will it be cheap and affordable to our people? Shall we also encourage our people to benefit from this infrastructure by ensuring that they supply the raw materials, or then go to buy raw materials from Uganda and other areas? So those are some of the fundamental issues.
Probably without digressing, may I ask whether the bill is dealing with the issues to do with the adding value and the packaging?
Actually, let's come back to that issue because I've got to take a break and we'll need to spend some time dealing on that. This is Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV and we'll be back after this break.